If I say the word big bait, you probably think I'm referring to a big glide bait or a big soft plastic swim bait, but these are not the only big baits out there on the market that catch big fish. In this video, I sit down with Oliver Nye, a renowned trophy bass hunter, and we talk about some big baits outside of the swim bait world that catch a lot of big fish. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a good one. When it comes to big baits, let's go ahead and dive right on in. I really want to know from you, because you've had so many different experiences with these bigger baits, and even like some smaller baits made off of these big baits. But like, what are some of your favorite, big baits outside of the typical, the glide baits, the big soft plastic swim baits?
There's all kinds of other big baits, right? Like you got big topwaters and every genre of topwater that exists in the traditional realm of bass fishing, whether it's a popper, like a Strike King KVD popper, or a stick, a walking stick bait like a spook or a sexy dog or whatever. Like there's a bigger variation of that now that trophy bass fishermen use to target bigger fish specifically. We've taken giant trevally design lures from the north coast of Australia and introduced them to the U.S. market here as a bass fishing lure. Mm-hmm. And when we first did a collaboration with this awesome up and coming brand called Cast Fishing, their U.S. division's based out of Florida, we got really excited about taking this balsa wood stick bait, and that's another like convoluted and oftentimes confusing genre of lure, because people look at that and they think, oh, you just walk the dog in a very methodical zigzag motion like you would a traditional topwater stick bait in the bass fishing realm. But really it's capable of so many other things in a presentation. And that's one of the things that made it so appealing for us to do a Big Bass Streams collaboration color. And we actually ended up doing 2 or 3 of them with a couple on the dock that we haven't had time to get to. But it's funny, they obviously wanted to break into this bass fishing market here in the US because it's the biggest in the world. Right? Like that. Australia is a small country. The number of people that fish the Great Barrier Reef is even smaller. Mm-hmm. So they're looking to expand their product range and their impact and their brand. And they brought over a 20 and a 30 gram size, which is probably like a 4 and maybe like a 4.5 inch body size, which to a North American bass fisherman seems like a big lure. Like that's bigger than a full size spook. Like maybe going back to like, what was that Excalibur version Super Spook? Remember that, a little bit bigger size? That was a big bait to most freshwater bass guys that I knew. And their smaller sizes are about in that range at 20, 30, 40 gram size. And they had just assumed that I wanted those smaller sizes. So when Mick asked me what sizes I wanted to run, I was like, all of them, because they make them all the way to 120 grams, which is like proper big, 10, 11 inch. Wow. He's like, are you serious? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. Like this is big bass streams, not any bass streams. And I've had a successful run at catching bass on unorthodox baits, especially the bigger variety. And even now on this road tour that we're on, I'm doing my best to show them something that the local fishing culture is not. And it often includes going bigger or showing them a different genre of lure. Like I just had Riley bring in that bait that I've been catching him off the dock. You can see it's actually all nice and wet, but this is a topwater bird crawler. Oh, right. And this is a smaller version of the original that we released originally from Defiant Fishing. Yeah, see, you got the big boy.
That's the big boy.
I designed that for largemouth.
Yep.
Okay, it's 6 inches long from tip of the nose to the tail, probably just as wide with the wings open, 4 ounces or so. Like it's not a small bait.
Like no, it's not.
Like I'm curious what your initial gut was the first time you pull that thing out of the package? Like, what was
I,
your feel?
yeah, for me, when I pulled it out, I was just like exactly what you would think is like, it's a big bait. It's a big presence on the water. I have not really thrown this, and it's because I just knew, I felt like I needed to be in the right situation. But the more that I got to look at it, the more that I've realized that it's, here's your little 6-inch, capsize type bait, really similar to a 6-inch mag draft. And you can see that, like they're pretty similar. I mean, obviously this has a bigger body, but full length wise, they are very similar. But yes, when I saw this, it's an intimidating bait for sure. And so and that's part of the reason why I haven't thrown it yet. But that was my first thing, is like, wow, that's a bird, that's almost a duck, really. I mean, that
You know,
thing's
1000%, man. And I was inspired to design and build that lure going back to when I lived in Texas, and
mm,
just the amount of bird life on and around the water. I don't know if you've spent any time down there, but like they got these wild flocks of these grackles, which
mm,
are like a black bird. They're so obnoxiously loud, but they like swarm in the hundreds and thousands, and they come in the water, they drink. They're always flying around that, and then you got all those swallows nesting on the bridges at places like Fork or anywhere that has a bridge, including downtown Austin on Ladybird. You've got urban bat populations in that same body of water, where literally like 2.5 million bats come in and out of that bridge every night.
wow.
And we'd be fishing in the late in the day and early in the morning, or even sometimes through the night, and occasionally you'd see one in the water, and one that made its way in there somehow, some way, and just came to the conclusion, like, man, these fish got to be eating these things more often than people are realizing.
Hmm.
And the success that we've been having has definitely, in my opinion, validated that hypothesis and theory.
Yeah.
And that initial hesitancy that you just described is also part of why we put the time and effort to build a slightly smaller bait that made it a little bit more manageable, and a little bit more appealing, because like the rod that I'm throwing it on is the rod most bass fishermen have.
This video is brought to you by Fin Fishing Apparel. Right now, for the month of June, I am running a package deal over on the website. If you get a USA made sun shirt, one of the only ones made here in the States, you will actually get a free rod glove. These are a neoprene rod glove. They really help to protect your rods, organize your rods, and they don't get constantly stuck like some of the mesh rod gloves. So it's real easy. All you got to do, add the sun shirt that you want to cart, add the rod glove that you want to cart, and you will see that automatic discount at checkout. I have a limited supplies of rod gloves, and this will end when I run out of the rod gloves. So if you guys would like to help support this channel, click that link down below for Fin Fishing.
This is a St. Croix Warhorse. It's like a standard 7'5", medium heavy action rod that you throw, like a single hook bait, like a buzz bait, spinner bait, chatter bait, maybe a swim jig, or even light punching. Something with a moderate fast taper. Almost everybody's got that rod, and at 4.5 inches and 1.6 ounces, it is so much less intimidating than that big version.
Mm.
So that's a perfect example of how we can introduce a same category or lure style at a smaller size, even on the capsize, right? Because that's a bait that is available in a 7.5 inch size, a 9 inch, and a 12.
Yeah.
And to build that confidence and experience, most importantly, to lead people down this deep rabbit hole of trophy bass fishing, like it's important to be able to build on some fundamental learning opportunities at a smaller size. And even though it's much smaller uh, overall than the 6 inch, like, it's not a small bait,
Mm-hmm.
and the bites it generates are not small, but it's also still getting crushed by 3-pound smallmouth off this dock.
That's
Like
crazy.
it's pretty wild to see time and time again the size of the fish that will take a swipe at these really big baits, these really big, obnoxious, like they definitely feel their presence. And, you know, in places like where I'm at here, in Vermont, upstate New York currently, that time we spent in Texas, like pretty much everywhere we go, those fish have been absolutely murdering. Those two baits in particular are probably the highlights. And, you know, especially for my clients that are looking to build that experience and confidence, they've been huge tools for me
Mm-hmm.
as someone that's trying to, uh, you know, facilitate that ability to tie on that 6-inch version of that bird and do it with confidence and high efficiency, because you're going to get so much more engagement on the smaller end of a lure size. And
Mm-hmm.
even on that, you know, cast OG and down under that I talked about, it was nice to have everything from a 20, 30, 40, 60, 75, 90, and 120 gram, because as an angler's experience and confidence grew, the more likely they were to tie on that next size up and stick with it, and also not blow it when they finally get a bite. Because as a general rule, the larger the size of the bait, the lower numbers of engagement I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
But on there's a corresponding trend of those fish being bigger on average.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I see a lot of people that jump into fishing, you know, especially with that COVID bubble, that skip straight to the top. Because to me, like, trophy bass fishing, especially largemouth fishing, is probably some of the most challenging, if not the most challenging fishing you can ever do. And like you said, I'm a multi-species guy. We run a successful saltwater charter business back in California. I've been lucky enough to travel off the continent several times to pursue some bucket list fish. But at the end of it all, like, I find myself coming back to fishing the same lame lakes in Southern California because it's hard.
Yeah.
Those fish get pummeled. They've seen every bait that becomes trendy. They have been caught and released multiple times, and they are an absolute pain in the to fool. But when you fool one, that context makes it so rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, you know, if it was easy, it wouldn't be special. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a really good way of putting it. I think it's a really good, just the way that you've kind of structured things, and even with the lure design that you've had, because, you know, one of the biggest things that I think guys struggle with is simply not getting bit on things, and they, you know, if an hour passes and they haven't get bit, like, their confidence is gone. I mean, even when it comes to a more standard size bait like a jig, you know, like, all of us start. You hear a lot of guys talk about, you know, throwing a 3/8 ounce, a half ounce, a 5/8 ounce jig, which is profile wise, you know, it's a couple inches long, and it'll get bit, but you're not going to get near as many bites as you might with a Texas rig. And I've told people for years, like, when it comes to fishing a jig, like, if you don't have a lot of confidence in it, pick up a finesse jig, you know, pick up a 1/4 ounce finesse jig. You're going to get a lot of bites. And then once you get that confidence, it's so much easier to step up to a 3/8 and a half ounce. And you've kind of built that same thing just within some of these, you know, big baits where it's, hey, yeah, we have a 9-inch cap size, big swim bait, a big old bird like this. But sometimes it's so intimidating at first that you really just need to be able to go out there, get a few bites, and kind of move on. I know that for me, you know, a number of years ago when I was really kind of wanting to fish a little bit bigger baits, and like you said, you know, 6 inches kind of on the small end of like what you would probably consider big baits. You know, being a tournament guy, I feel like I kind of live in that 6 to 8 inch range with a lot of baits when it comes to big baits, mostly swim baits. But it took me a minute to even go from a 6-inch style like swim bait, like a mag draft or a capsize, to like the 8-inch, because although it's only 2 inches bigger, it's probably twice as much plastic in that bait. And but now, you know, after I got used to fishing that 8-inch, you look at the 6-inch and it just looks smaller. Like, it literally just like mindset. Like, as soon as you look at it, you're like, geez, that thing almost looks like a finesse bait. So it's kind of cool the way that you've structured things. I don't have any of the small birds yet, but I'm definitely going to be getting some. And I think that it's crazy that you're just sitting there on the back of your, on the dock on Lake Champlain, literally just casting out there and catching bass. And that's the other cool thing about big baits, is it's not necessarily always a big body of water boat fishing thing. Like there's a lot of guys who fish ponds that could be like really catching a lot of fish on birds and things like that that are out of the ordinary. And I'm sure you've had some experience with that, you know, fishing more really small lakes.
Yeah, it's been interesting watching this season progress because we released these smaller birds through the expos
Mm-hmm.
during the show season, you know, that started in January and ran through the classic, which was towards the end of March. And I made sure I got a couple of our early production samples to some of our team members just so they would have them in hand when I felt those windows of opportunity would open up. And generally, like, you know, topwater fish for me are some of the most fun ways to catch bass. Like if I can see that eat like on top, like that visual element adds to just the overall experience. But for me, like that generally happens like on the low end, like when the water temps start creeping steadily and holding at 60 degrees, but it
Mm-hmm.
gets substantially better when it's closer to 65.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously holds pretty solid throughout the summer season through this post spawn period that we're experiencing a little bit now in the northern part of the country. But I sent one bird to my boy Jason, who lives in Dallas Fort Worth, and if you're familiar with that DFW area, dude, like they get ice storms, right? They get snowstorms and blizzards, and like we got stuck there for a week coming back from a Chicagoland expo a couple years ago.
Wow.
And the first week of February, he's sending me photos and videos of him busting their like in the break of a snowstorm. And I'm like, hold on, man. Like, okay, that had to be a fluke. And he just kept catching them. So even as much time as I've spent on the water over the years, I still find myself learning all the time and seeing like windows of opportunity open up when I previously wouldn't have thought it was a high percentage idea to go out there and throw any of these baits in certain scenarios. And big baits in particular have proven to break these like mental molds that I've formed over the years.
Mm.
There's something about the size as a singular dynamic makes those fish behave out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken hold. Like we've sold out of several batches of this bait, both through the retailers like Lake Pro Tackle, Tackle Shack Austin, Tackle Warehouse, and through the website. And at every expo it's sold out because people that were familiar with that larger size bird you saw, if they had bought one, probably had similar experiences to you. Didn't have a whole lot of confidence throwing that giant friggin' quacker all along the shorelines. But then this thing comes in so much smaller and unassuming side by side. It's like, oh, I could throw that.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of success people are finding with this thing is more rewarding than anything. As you know, as a creator, as someone that put a lot of thought and effort into building this specific crawler. And
Yeah.
people of all kinds, kayak fishermen, bank fishermen, tournament guys are starting to unlock it because it definitely gets like good bites. Like we had a nice 28-pound bag. Should have had a dirty 30 on Lake Austin on some like skinny looking like post spawn fish already. And I mean, they were crushing it, man. Like it is so much fun. And I think you can see that if you go like to the Defiant Fishing social medias like Instagram and you see how many different people from all over the country are just like speaking with this youthful exuberism because they're having so much fun with it. Like it's been everything, man. Like that's why I try to put this podcast off just so I can go experience it again myself. Like it's so addicting. And you know, I'm at a point in my career now that it matters to me that I catch these fish how I want to catch them, and I can experience fishing how I want to experience it versus just catching fish.
Yeah. I gotta ask you too, a couple things. One, like you said earlier, I think it's crazy that, like you said, big baits almost like they make fish act in a completely different way. You know, like you could cast so many baits at the exact same fish, and then all of a sudden you present them with a big bait of some sort, whether that's a big bait, a big swim bait, and it just simply like causes them to do something different. And I think that it's interesting that you were talking about your buddy in the Carolinas there, because you know I've fished down in Georgia and North Carolina, South Carolina a lot. I fished in those herring lakes, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, down there a lot of things, especially when it comes to spotted bass, is like speed oriented. Like you want to be bringing stuff almost as fast as you can. And so for him to be able to present, you know, those type of fish with something that is not moving quickly on the water, I find it just crazy. And like you said, it almost makes them act in a totally different way, in a totally different manner. But I do want to actually get into the bird just a little bit, because is it as simple as it sounds to fish? Is it casted out and just, is it a slow type of reel across, or do you do anything specific with that bait? Do you kill it? Is there anything that you do with that when you're working that bait?
Yeah, that's a funny timed question, because we just dropped a tackle breakdown video on it on the Big Bass Dreams channel that goes into a deep dive, so I can save us 16 minutes of that video, right? That I worked really hard to put together, but I'll touch on some of it here.
Sure.
It is almost stupid proof.
Yeah.
All right, like the way Fred fishes it is honestly kind of boring to me. He fishes it just fast enough to get it to go bloop, 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 bloop. And I like doing all kinds of wild stuff, right? Like there's like a sweet spot in the higher band of speed where I present this thing, where it gets almost frantic looking, like it's panicking, like trying to get out of the water unsuccessfully. Like it's right before it blows out. Like you can't fish this bait like at a true burn like you can with that capsize, right? You can take that capsize and virtually turn that handle as fast as you want, and it's going to swim true. But you know, this is a topwater crawler. The angle and the pitch of the wings affects the roll. We designed this bait to have an oscillating action, which makes it different from virtually any crawler on the market. And he catches really big ones though doing that. It's a very subtle, simple presentation. When I put this in the hands of somebody that hasn't fished it yet, honestly, we always check the temperature of the room. Right, every day is different. Especially if you ever fish Lake Champlain this time of year. Holy crap, man! It's like fishing a new body of water every day. The wind blows out of the north today. It's going to blow out of the south tomorrow. You know, it's 90. It was literally 90 degrees today, and I was cooking. You know, it was 40 degrees in this region last week. It's always in flux, right? It's not a static environment. And the mood and willingness of these fish to make a play on any of these lures is going to change, not only day by day, but like hour by hour. And frankly, like I can feel that sun open up out of the clouds, and in that moment understand that there's a window of opportunity potentially for how I like catching these fish. So you always got to stay on your toes, and that has really taught me to be variable in my presentations with every lure, including the bird. But generally, dude, if it's good, which it's about to get good, all you gotta do is chuck and wind it.
Yeah.
Fire it up there, like on big flats, like throw it anywhere you would throw anything else. Like if a bass would live on it, like I think one of the reasons why this dock is so good is I can see a ledge, right? It goes like a gradual, like nothing to like probably 3 or 4 feet. And then, yeah, I can see a very definite break. And when I throw that Ned rig out there, I can definitely like count my bait down 15, 20 feet easily. And a couple of those smallmouth I caught the other night shocked me because they were definitely over that deeper edge. And I've had enough experience over the years to see these fish, and now confirm with forward-facing sonar and fishing like aloe flakes like up here. Like smallmouth, largemouth spots will absolutely come up 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 feet to eat a topwater.
Crazy.
And they do it. They do it time and time again, and they shoot right back down afterwards. It's wild.
Yeah.
So, I was throwing that thing on just a long bomb cast on a straight retrieve,
Hmm.
medium pace. And when it's good, that's all you got to do. But where it gets really fun for me is when I feel like I have to get really precise and technical. Like I posted a short little clip of a couple fish I caught on Champlain the other day. Fishing has gotten tough. Like I think this crazy up and down weather has got them like into that weird post spawn funk already. We're having to work for all of our bites, so it's not like we're just going out there and chucking and winding aimlessly and just catching bass every which way. Like we're having to work for the bites that we get, and I enjoy fishing when it's like that because like once again there's a sense of accomplishment there, right? But I'm having to put this bait like strategically and very precisely on like rock walls where I may feel some of these birds like to nest and occasionally it'll fall in the water or around overhanging limbs, right? You see terrestrial birds love to land on overhanging trees and branches and bushes and stuff, especially to take a drink. So I'm trying to get this ounce and a half bait roughly very accurately in these tiny little pockets and minimize splash because I feel like when you're fishing it in that manner, like closer proximity, target oriented,
Hmm.
like places where someone would like flip a jig and presentations that you're trying to be so stealthy, like you don't want that thing making any splash. And I can do that with this bait, and it's challenging to have those mechanics, and it keeps me focused, and that's part of the fun of it all. It's like just like getting dialed in and like like, oh man, that was a badass cast, and you go to twitch and boosh, like, oh I forgot I was kind of like trying to catch a fish here. I was so focused on presenting this lure in the most subtle ninja like way I can, and it matters at times. And in those situations, this is where you see a lot of the variation in the presentation. Right,
Mm.
hits the water. I generally like to actually make commotion with the bait in the water. Like the moment it's in the water subtly, I'll make commotion. If that makes sense, like it's different than it like plopping in the water. Boosh. I
Yeah.
feel like that could be a potentially spooking dynamic versus if you can get that thing to enter the water like Greg Louganis back in the day from those diving boards. Definitely aging myself with comments like that. But then create a tension with the lure itself. You'll get what I call like freebie bites. You land on their head and they're just going to react to it the same way Riley starts swatting at a wasp while buzzing around her head.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's kind of like, you think about the way that a bird might hit the water. It's birds are very light, and when they hit the water, it's probably not a great big splash, but they're probably immediately trying to crawl their way out.
like, get me the
So
hell out of here.
yeah, they're trying to get out of the water. I mean, so it makes sense. And that's actually a question I had for you, especially when it comes to like the bird and other big baits, like for example, like you see guys throwing big rats and stuff like that. You see it a lot more again out west, which seems to be just big bait central. But anyways, do you think that a lot of these presentations are mimicking like actually what they are? Like, do you think a lot of times, like I hear you even saying it, like I'm trying to look for these areas where I think birds actually may be. So do you think that a lot of times when you find the best bite, it's because they're actually feeding on that? Or do you think that there are sometimes too where, you could just throw it by a bluegill bed and it's just going to be intriguing enough to a bass that they just come up there and hit it?
I think both those scenarios play out.
Hmm.
People have looked at bird mimicking lures as gimmicky for a long time. Even when a legend of our sport, Aaron Martens attributes to his observing bass eating baby coots in the reeds at Havasu in a
Havasu.
Bassmaster Elite event. He might not have been catching them on a bird lure per se, but he was targeting actively feeding bass that were consuming small birds.
Yep. I remember that.
And you can go both ways with it, right? And frankly, like I might have felt that same way until I started testing these crazy hypotheses in my head. Or what is it, hypothesis? What's a plural of one, of
That's,
hypothesis?
that
Like,
sounds right. This isn't a grammar podcast. It's just, say
but
whatever you want.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing about fishing is it's an ongoing scientific experiment for me. And at home, like we have these steep canyon rock walls in our damned canyon reservoirs, and we get these swallows that nest on them. And one day, man, like I was watching these adults like fighting each other, in the air, and they'd like tumble down to the water, hit the water, fly back up, and of course, I'd see an occasional like baby bird fall in the water, and I'm like, I got a bunch of frogs here. Let me throw like a brown one up against that wall, and my buddy, everybody has to make that comment and sneer, and and just be a dick about it, right? Like, oh yeah, you're an idiot. Like they don't eat birds. And dude, first cast on that rock wall, like twitching that freaking spro bronze-eye frog in that brown pattern, boosh, and it just kept happening, and it just kept happening, and it got to the point where I started phasing out frog-colored frogs.
Yeah.
Like I threw panfish, like bluegill and red ear patterns, to fish around these bluegill beds that are everywhere now. And bird patterns, whites, blacks, browns, some yellows, and they keep biting them. So who's to say that it doesn't happen? And it's interesting seeing, with social media, people are so able to share random things like a photo of two bird feet sticking out of a throat or a regurgitated bird in a live well. Like it happens a lot.
Yeah.
And you talked about rat fishing, and I think that's a similar dynamic. Like predators overall are very opportunistic, right? Like if you are willing to try eating different things, your odds of survival and passing on your genes are that much higher. And I think there are other cases where, like you said, like fishing this thing over, bluegill or brim beds or whatever you want to call sunfish might just trigger a reaction because it's there and it's vulnerable. And dude, bass are a-holes, like, smallmouth and spots, especially. Like, actually, I missed one last night that I think punched this thing. And it's the first miss I've had in weeks on this bait. I think he just punched it with his mouth closed, like they love to do sometimes.
Yeah.
It scared the crap out of me, but I was thankful for that experience. Like, that heart jumping out of your chest is awesome when it comes through a fishing rod. Here's something that I've encountered over the years. We can absolutely wear out our own bites. Forget all about the hole buzzards, as Ben likes to call them. All right, if you fish the same body of water in the same spots over and over again and catch them the same way, you're going to wear that population of fish out. Like you're going to catch the willing ones, the dumb ones, and you kind of got to stay. I've always had to stay ahead of myself because I've seen it. I've had buddies try to jump on the boat and fish the way they saw me catch them the day before. And it's like, man, you're already behind the 8 ball. Like, I already wore those fish out.
Yep.
Like, so having a similar lure style in different sizes and even different color shades, right? Even with the bird, that was an interesting observation that I had one day with my man Caleb, who, booked me for a glide bait fishing training session because he really wanted to deep dive into the glide bait. And we spent the first day committed to it. But those fish, dude, those fish have been pummeled by glide baits.
Yeah.
Some jerk from California came out there 10 years ago and put a bunch of videos out there and, inspired a lot of the locals to tie on a giant bait and chuck them at those fish. And I'm telling you, those fish were not as eager as they were when I lived there. And I was like, what they haven't seen is this guy.
Yeah.
And while he was fishing that glide up front, I'd be on the back of the boat and not fishing, water and taking away shots from him. So he's got every shot and every cast that he wants to make. And I'm just even pitching this thing 10 feet out from the back of the boat sometimes. And doosh, doosh.
Jeez.
Like, dude, that's a good one. I'm like, yeah, I know. And it's like, all right, man, give me one. And we ended up, crushing him, and it became his new favorite lure.
Yeah.
This is a dedicated big bait enthusiast, right? Like he's got all the things, like all the custom swim bait rods, all the hype big baits, and he's good with them. Like it wasn't that he didn't have the ability to get bit on the glide. It was just a situation where those fish had become highly conditioned to it, but they hadn't seen this thing.
Hmm.
And he took it home, and he's still sending me videos and pictures of 5 to 8 pound fish in Louisiana that he's crushing.
Yeah.
And
And I think it's, we see that time and time again in bass fishing when new baits come onto the market that bass in general haven't seen. Like, you just think about the chatterbaits, the whopper ploppers. Like, when they come out, like, bass do crush them for a while. And that's kind of also why I didn't really want to talk specifically and constantly about glide baits and big swim baits, although they're great baits. Like, they have really gone eastward. Like, I feel like everyone I mean, there's definitely a population of people that don't throw them, but I feel like a lot of people are throwing them these days. Like, every tournament fisherman that I know, like, they have a box of glide baits these days. Like, they have
sure,
them, but they don't have a box of birds. They don't have something that literally is to me is kind of like, again, chatterbaits when they came out, whopper
yeah,
ploppers when they came out. Like, you literally just told us how you were casting right behind somebody fishing a glide bait. And even in that part of the country, who knows how many of those fish have seen glide baits, and you're just sitting there crushing them. And so I love that. I mean, it gets me pumped. Like, I'm very pumped, like, especially with the season that we're going into, like you said, summertime. Like, we're in that post spawn time where it's like they're already starting to hit top really good. So I'm like, man, I'm pumped. I need to get my hands on one, because I mean, I got this big one, but I'd love to get that 4.5 inch for sure.
yeah. I think you would definitely have a lot of fun with the smaller version. We actually just got a restock yesterday, so they're available on the Defiant Fishing website now. And I'm going to talk to the team, and we'll do a Bass Juice podcast discount code for your viewers, if they
Nice.
want to jump into it.
Heck yeah.
So let's just do Bass Juice. Just Bass Juice as a code that work?
That works for me. I mean,
All
shoot,
right.
on the spot, Bass Juice on the Defiant. What's the website called?
It's defiantfishing.com, and
All
that'll be
right.
good for any of the products. Obviously, the Big Bird, we've got the 210, 247 swim bait, which is a very popular soft swim bait. We got the braided line that we fish exclusively. We got a soft casting and a heavy cover fluorocarbon, as well as a shock leader fluorocarbon. We got some innovative stuff. Like, yeah, there you go.
There we go. 210 right there.
And once again, like, that 210 is the baby bird to the full size bird of the 247.
Yeah.
Like, you want to build confidence and learn that category of swim bait, you're going to get probably 10 bites to 1 in most scenarios with that 210 versus the 247.
Now, this video was actually less than half of the full conversation that I had with Oliver Nye. If you guys would like to check out the full video, I'm going to leave it linked right up here. Also, if you guys want to check out Fin Fishing, you can click on this link right here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I will see you in the next one.